Among other things, the singer is expected to address the 2016 video of Combs attacking her.
Combs' federal trial. Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, she is one of Combs' many accusers, testifying as a central witness. Is she ready?
Very ready and confident. Thank you.
He was once hailed as a titan, a kingmaker, the very definition of success in the world of hip-hop. But everything changed yesterday when Cassie Ventura took the stand and unleashed a series of allegations so shocking, even veteran journalists were left speechless.
She walked in there, Rachel. She had on a brown dress, form-fitting, visibly pregnant, head held high, and did not make any eye contact with the defendant, with Sean Combs. He said that Sean Combs directed everything from what she had on, to the lighting in the room, to how she was supposed to interact with the person that she was having sex with. And again, just to reiterate, what is a freak-off?
Diddy's polished, commanding persona unraveled before everyone's eyes as his former partner recounted one unsettling claim after another. This was the same man who once ruled the music industry with unmatched authority, now sitting slumped and visibly shaken. Cassie spoke without restraint, laying everything bare. No censorship, no hesitation. Diddy didn't just thrive in the music business, he redefined it. He built Bad Boy Records from the ground up, transforming unknown talent into household names. His empire grew beyond music, branching into fashion, liquor, and media. On the surface, he looked unstoppable, the ultimate symbol of turning hip-hop into a financial empire. But that sleek, invincible image is crumbling fast. Once celebrated as a visionary, a leader, a mogul, Cassie's testimony is exposing a much darker narrative behind the glitz and influence. And if even a portion of her words hold weight, it could completely rewrite everything the world thought it knew about him.
Freak-off essentially was something that Cassie said she learned about through Sean Combs about a year into their relationship. He described it as voyeurism, wanting to watch her have sex with someone else. And she said that she did it because she was 22, 21, she was young, she didn't know any better, and that she wanted to please Sean Combs.
While Diddy was gracing magazine covers and soaking up red carpet praise, Cassie claims she was living in a completely different reality. The courtroom shifted in mood the moment she began to speak. Picture this. The man known for his sharp suits, perfect public persona, and total command of every room, suddenly stripped of that image by someone who truly knew him. What she shared didn't resemble the version of Diddy fans admired. It felt like she was describing a completely different person. When he arrived for day 2 in court, Diddy looked every bit the billionaire mogul, surrounded by top-tier attorneys, moving through the crowd with confidence, offering nods and smiles like nothing could shake him. His suit was flawless, his walk smooth, his charm on full display. But that air of control didn't last. According to those present, everything shifted once Cassie began speaking. The confidence drained from his face. The cool demeanor vanished. That legendary confidence? Gone. Within just 30 minutes, he was visibly rattled. And Cassie hadn't even finished. His lawyers were already scrambling, objecting, interrupting, doing whatever they could to stop her words from landing. Because deep down they knew this was about to change everything.
Among other things, the singer is expected to address the 2016 video of Combs attacking her in a hotel when she was his girlfriend. Combs has pleaded not guilty. His attorneys argued the video is evidence of jealousy, not sex trafficking. And now for the first time, jurors are hearing what Cassie has to say about that and other aspects of their 10-year relationship.
At some point in time, she actually had said that she looked forward to the freak-offs. Why did Cassie express looking forward to these sex freak-offs?
When the prosecution asked her, was there ever a time that you enjoyed the freak-offs? This is when Cassie got choked up and she said, I did, but only because I got to spend one-on-one time with Combs, and I really did love him.
And that is speaking to the psychological abuse.
Imagine it. The man who once pulled the strings behind chart-topping artists and multi-million-dollar media deals now fidgeting in his seat, completely powerless to stop what was unfolding. Eyewitnesses say he couldn't sit still. The control he once held so tightly had completely slipped away. As Cassie took the witness stand, all attention shifted to Diddy. His reaction was immediate. Reportedly, his face went pale, drained of all color. He tugged at his tie, adjusted his cufflinks, then resorted to wringing his hands in visible distress. One journalist described how he began scribbling notes frantically, pushing them to his legal team at a dizzying pace like he was struggling to stay afloat. At one point, the flurry got so intense that one of his attorneys had to literally raise a hand to slow him down. The room could feel it. Diddy wasn't in control anymore.
In addition to the physical abuse that she potentially experienced.
Yeah, she's definitely laying out someone who was young, who was influenced by wanting to have this record career. She signed a 10-album deal with Bad Boy Entertainment led by Sean Combs, and basically describes being enamored by Sean Combs, loving him, not knowing about certain things sexually, and him sort of telling her, teaching her about that. And what you hear is someone that was young and she even said,
one courtroom reporter described it as witnessing someone come to terms, for the very first time, with the fact that they no longer controlled their own narrative. Another observer said Diddy looked physically unwell as Cassie continued to speak with steady composure. She wasn't shouting. She didn't break down. She simply spoke with a calm, unwavering tone, and that made her words land with even more impact. The contrast was striking, her quiet truth against his unraveling presence. And that quiet delivery? It made every word feel heavier, more real, and impossible to ignore.
you know, I was young, I was naive, I didn't know any better, but she's really telling the story of someone who thought she was going to be with someone in this music industry that was going to help her career, that cared about her, but quickly learned after the freak-offs that wasn't the case. And what I thought was also interesting is she said that after that first freak-off, she said she felt dirty. She didn't want to do it. And when she brought up the idea of having a conversation about the freak-offs in an email, which the jurors saw, she said she backpedaled in the email because Combs responded by saying, "I know, you don't want to do it."
One person in the courtroom even noted seeing Diddy shut his eyes repeatedly as if he couldn't bear to look at Cassie or hear the words she was saying. And here's the thing, that was just the start. As the afternoon unfolded, it became clear to everyone why he was coming apart. What Cassie was about to reveal next wasn't just personal, it was the kind of revelation that could shake the entire music industry. A single allegation with the potential to bring down everything Diddy had spent decades creating. For a man known for shaping stories, directing the spotlight, and always staying one step ahead, this was different. This was a moment he couldn't script, spin, or silence. And it was unfolding in real time, with the whole world watching.
And she said, "Oh no, well, it's not that." But that was the beginning. That was in 2010, where she brings up in an email that she wanted to have a conversation about this. And in her words, she didn't want to do it, but she felt like she had to do it.
Diane, prosecutors have wasted no time getting right into the alleged abuse that Cassie Ventura says she endured for years. Ventura telling jurors, quote, "He would bash my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me in the head when I was down." She also got into the nature of those so-called freak-offs, saying that they involved hiring an escort and they performed under the direction of Combs, saying that they happened so frequently.
When Cassie finally stepped up to the stand, the silence in the courtroom was almost eerie. You could literally hear people breathing. Everyone had anticipated this moment, but when it arrived, not even Diddy's top-tier legal team seemed fully prepared for what she was about to unleash. After years of keeping quiet, of carrying the weight in silence, Cassie had finally reached the microphone. And this time, she wasn't holding anything back. And when Cassie began, she didn't launch into accusations with fury. She started quietly, and that subtle approach made her words cut even deeper. She rewound the clock, bringing the courtroom back to where it all began, when she met Diddy at just 19. At the time, he was already a powerhouse in the industry, wealthy, influential, and deeply connected. She was a young model with dreams of making it in music. From the start, the imbalance was stark, and Cassie says Diddy was fully aware of it. According to her, he used that imbalance to his benefit right from the beginning. Her testimony unfolded like a gripping, slow-burning drama. At first, it was the small things, what she called check-ins that felt more like surveillance, with him allegedly needing to know her every move, every hour of the day. Then came the unannounced appearances when she was out with friends. Next, it was her career. She claimed he threatened to shelve her music if she didn't comply with his demands. and sabotaged potential collaborations if he sensed the slightest threat to his control.
It eventually became a job for her to set them up. Ventura said she did not feel she had much of a choice but to participate, that she feared that Combs would retaliate or potentially blackmail her if she did not. And she's had at times to take, she's taken deep breaths, pausing her testimony. Combs appearing to be listening pretty passively with his hands in his lap at the defense table there.
Cassie's relationship with Diddy. Some of those details we've seen.
Little by little, Cassie described how her sense of freedom was stripped away. But then came the moment that truly stunned the room. According to court transcripts, she testified that Diddy had allegedly installed tracking software on her phone. She claimed he would contact her within minutes of her arriving at a location, already knowing exactly where she was without her ever saying a word. She went on to say that he slowly isolated her from anyone who might have helped her get out, cutting ties with friends, collaborators, even people who had supported her for years. Bit by bit, she said, he became the only person left in her world. The tension in the courtroom became unbearable. People were visibly shaken. Things got so intense that the judge had to restore order 3 separate times just during that part of her testimony.
In prior lawsuits, but to hear her on the stand actually giving those details, reliving those moments herself. Also, you have to remember, she's very pregnant right now. So I'm gonna be curious to see how long she makes it on the stand, how she's emotionally able to weather all of these questions. And what's going to be interesting to watch is, you know, the defense from the very start in their opening statement said that she chose to be there. So I'm going to be curious to see how she responds to questions about
Diddy? He was reportedly shaking his head, whispering urgently to his lawyers, his expressions fully visible to the jury. Each time the judge issued a warning, he'd settle down for a few minutes, only to fall back into the same restless behavior. It was like watching a man accustomed to having control suddenly grasp that this time, he couldn't silence the truth. Then came the game changer. Cassie pulled out her phone and handed it to her attorney. Instantly, texts and emails lit up the big screen for everyone to see. The look on Diddy's face was pure disbelief. He clearly hadn't expected that she had kept evidence from years earlier. There were messages where he allegedly apologized for violent outbursts. Others included threats to ruin her career if she ever spoke out. These weren't vague accusations. They were direct blows that contradicted everything his team had publicly claimed. And those messages? That was only the beginning. As Cassie continued, her testimony dove into even darker territory.
Was this her choice, or did she feel like she had to do all of these things?
I think what made Cassie emotional is having to describe the details of the freak-off and why she did it. When she talked about wanting to do it to please Sean Combs, that's when she broke down. Up until that point, she had just been answering the questions. She's a little soft-spoken at times, but that...
She began to reveal allegations of physical abuse that supposedly spanned their entire relationship, and the courtroom fell into a heavy silence. Every word hung in the air as she recounted moments of being slammed against walls during arguments. Then came a statement that left everyone breathless. She claimed Diddy once pushed her down a flight of stairs at a rental home in Miami. But the accusations didn't end there. Cassie testified that on multiple occasions, Diddy allegedly choked her to the brink of unconsciousness, only releasing his grip when her body went limp. The gravity of her testimony stunned everyone present, freezing the room in disbelief.
When she got emotional, when she had to answer the question about if she enjoyed it, that's when she broke down, because she said, I enjoyed being with Sean Combs. And she says, I did it because it made him happy.
What did the expressions of the jurors look like?
The jurors are laser focused on what Cassie has to say. And that's to be expected, right? Because she is the person who will likely be on the stand, according to attorneys, for 2, maybe 3 days. She's the one that was in a relationship with Sean Combs for over 10 years. So she's got a lot to say, and she's just getting started.
Just how important is Cassie's testimony to the prosecution?
The atmosphere in the room grew heavy. People were visibly shaken. One older woman on the jury quietly wiped away tears, while a male juror couldn't even bring himself to meet Diddy's gaze. Reporters, many of whom had witnessed countless trials, admitted they weren't prepared for how raw and vivid Cassie's testimony was. And that was only the build-up to the hotel incident that would shake the entire case to its core. I thought I was going to die that night, Cassie said, her voice barely above a whisper. The courtroom leaned in, hanging on every word. What she described was something no one had ever heard before. Not the media, not the blogs, not even her most dedicated fans. An event at the Four Seasons Hotel that had remained completely hidden until now. Cassie revealed she stayed silent all those years out of fear. Fear for her safety, fear for her career, fear that no one would believe her against someone with such power. But now, she made it clear she was done keeping quiet.
I think it really connects the dots, Rachel. When you look at that initial indictment and what's being alleged, she really is the person that has probably the most information about this idea that the prosecution says, which is creating a criminal enterprise for Sean Combs' sexual desires. Something else that the jurors saw today that sort of connects it back to this alleged criminal enterprise are 7 photos of people that were very close to Sean Combs, one even his former chief of staff. And these were all people.
Cassie said it all began after what should have been just another typical industry after-party. She recalled that Diddy suddenly lost his composure when he saw her talking to another music executive. His friendly smile vanished. She described how he grabbed her arm so tightly it left clear marks and whispered threats in her ear, all while keeping up that polished, charming facade for the people around them. Then came the moment that left the courtroom holding its breath. Cassie testified that Diddy dragged her across the hotel lobby toward the elevators. Dragged. She was crying, struggling to break free, creating such a scene that hotel security stepped in. But here's the shocking part. When the guard saw who Diddy was, he simply asked, "Is everything okay?" And when Diddy said yes, the guard just walked away, without even checking on Cassie. "He didn't even ask me if I was okay," Cassie told the court. Then came the bombshell. Her lawyers revealed the photos. Cassie had taken a series of pictures the very next morning. Bruises on her arms, a busted lip, red marks on her neck. These weren't staged or retouched shots. They were raw, shaky mirror selfies snapped in a bathroom, making the evidence feel all the more real. She explained that she'd taken the photos because she knew she might one day need proof. She was afraid no one would believe her unless they could see the evidence with their own eyes.
That Cassie Ventura was able to name and explain the functions in terms of what they did: security, driver, chief of staff, someone that handled financials. So it's showing that she knew some of these people, again, because she was with him, around him for so long.
I think what the defense is going to say is that this wasn't blackmail, this was not coercion, this was consensual. We know that Cassie started out with Sean Combs as an early person, with someone who is trying to get her career started, and he was going to help her. That's what the defense is going to say, that she was starting out and wanted someone to support her. They did their first record deal together.
Diddy's legal team fought fiercely to keep those photos out of the jury's hands. They argued the images weren't properly verified, could have come from any incident, and that it was too late to introduce them now. But the judge rejected every objection, and just like that, the pictures were displayed on the big screen for everyone to see. The effect was immediate and powerful. One female juror gasped, covering her mouth in shock. 2 male jurors couldn't even face the images, turning their heads away. In the back, another juror scribbled rapidly in her notebook, her hand visibly shaking. The atmosphere in the room shifted. Everyone could feel it. This hotel incident hit like a bombshell no one expected. It hadn't been mentioned in any prior court documents or statements. Diddy's team had no defense ready because they hadn't anticipated it. The panic on his lawyers' faces was obvious to everyone watching. Then Cassie dropped another staggering detail. She claimed Diddy had thrown a champagne bottle at her head, missing by mere inches and shattering against the wall. She described how he erupted in a violent rage, wrecking the room by smashing a lamp, flipping a table, and punching a hole straight through the bathroom door, but the darkest moment came next. Cassie testified that Diddy trapped her in that hotel room for over 48 hours, confiscated her phone, and warned her there would be serious consequences if she tried to reach out for help. When she finished that part of her testimony, the entire courtroom turned their eyes to Diddy, everyone eager to see his reaction and what would unfold next.
I think the defense is going to focus on, and had it not been for Sean Combs, she wouldn't be where she is right now. The prosecution obviously is saying he was in control. It may have started out as a consensual. It may have started out with her being excited about seeing him, but ultimately he took control of that relationship. He took control of her career. This is their key witness, and she's on that stand trying to explain all of the charges that the prosecution wants to hit home with that jury.
No, there was a moment early on when Cassie mentioned Dallas Austin, who she called a friend who's a producer. So I don't know if that's someone that we're going to hear from. We know that there were pictures shown to prospective jurors that are well-known celebrities, you know, Kanye West, Kid Cudi, Lauren London. We don't know, though, how they fit yet into why they were even asked, do you know these people? Are you familiar with them?
So the prosecution is...
That moment might become the defining image, not just of this trial, but of Sean Diddy Combs' entire legacy. No one present will ever forget it. The man known as the mogul, the media titan, the icon who built his empire on staying cool under pressure, he broke down right there in front of everyone. The polished, composed businessman mask he'd worn for decades shattered. What emerged beneath wasn't calm or collected. It was pure chaos. This was a man who spent years crafting a brand where nothing ever shook him. Always the boss, always in control. But as Cassie laid down one devastating blow after another, his entire demeanor shifted. Court reporters who had covered countless high-profile cases said they had never witnessed anything like this. Diddy physically changed in that courtroom, shrinking back in his chair, no longer the towering figure who had confidently entered that morning. His legal team scrambled, desperately trying to manage the damage. One observer sitting behind them noticed Diddy's lead attorney repeatedly touching his arm, attempting to steady him. At one point, the lawyer slid a note across the table that reportedly read, "Stay calm," in bold letters. But it didn't make a difference. Tensions boiled over when Cassie brought up an incident allegedly taking place at Diddy's Hampton estate. In response, Diddy slammed his hand down on the table with a force that echoed like a gunshot throughout the courtroom. The judge immediately called for a halt. "Mr. Combs," the judge warned sharply, "if you can't keep yourself under control, I will have you removed from this courtroom." For a brief moment, it seemed like he might actually be kicked out of his own trial. Throughout Cassie's testimony, Diddy couldn't hide his reactions, shaking his head, silently mouthing, "That's not true," every time she dropped a heavy claim. But he seemed to forget there was a jury watching every single move. A courtroom insider described it perfectly. It looked like a man who had never been challenged before suddenly realizing he had lost control over the entire room. Imagine that shift. Years of allegedly controlling every detail of Cassie's life, and now she held the microphone. There was no way for him to silence her. No security to escort her out. No press statement to spin the narrative. He simply had to sit there and endure it. But the moment everything truly cracked came when Cassie began describing the threats. She testified that Diddy had warned her. If she ever spoke up about what happened, he would go after her family.
Cassie right now still questioning her.
The bench hasn't even got a chance to, I mean, that might change based on the timing, but, you know, because she's such a key witness, it's likely that she will be on that stand the rest of the day. We learned that Cassie referred to him as Pop Pop, and Sean Combs would refer to her as CC. The prosecution says, "What does CC stand for?" They said,
And then, bam, she hit them with another explosive revelation. Cassie's lawyer announced they had recordings, real audio of Diddy's voice making those alleged threats. When the tape started playing, Diddy completely lost it. He sprang out of his chair, pointing fiercely at Cassie, yelling, "You know that's not how it happened!" It took 3 of his lawyers to physically restrain him and pull him back down. The courtroom was frozen in disbelief. This wasn't just a meltdown, it was a total unraveling on full display. Despite their efforts, Diddy kept trying to shout over the audio, refusing to stay quiet. The judge had no choice but to call an immediate recess, but the damage was already done. Everyone saw it. The jury, the press, court staff witnessed the breakdown of the man once thought untouchable. As they escorted Diddy out, he looked nothing like the polished mogul who had confidently walked in that morning. That calm, commanding facade had vanished. What was left wasn't the powerhouse everyone expected. It was someone completely unhinged. But just when it seemed like the surprises were over, Cassie dropped yet another bombshell. This time, it was even more devastating than anything before. She had evidence, something far beyond the photos and texts that had already rocked the courtroom. This was next-level proof no one saw coming. Not the judge, not the jury, and certainly not Diddy saw it coming. For years, Cassie had quietly been gathering proof, carefully and secretly stashing away emails, texts, photos, all backed up in places far beyond Diddy's reach. Then came the moment that brought the courtroom to a halt. She revealed messages from celebrities, major names, who allegedly witnessed Diddy's behavior firsthand. And these weren't random onlookers. These were insiders from Diddy's closest circle, friends, longtime collaborators, people who had toured, partied, and built empires alongside him. They had seen sides of Diddy the public never got to know. When Cassie named these sources, Diddy reportedly turned ghostly pale. One observer said he looked as if he was about to vomit. His lawyers sprang into action, loudly objecting and demanding a sidebar with the judge. They argued the celebrity texts were hearsay, claimed they weren't properly submitted, and tried every possible tactic to block them. But the judge was unimpressed. After privately reviewing the messages, she returned and shut down every objection. The texts were deemed highly relevant and were admitted into evidence. That ruling sent a clear message. This case was about to get even more serious.
She said Cassie Combs.
What kind of witness is Cassie coming off as to the jury?
I think naturally when you look at her visually, people see that she's pregnant and looking like she's due any day now. So they might, have empathy, sympathy for her in that way, but we don't really know. We know that they've been instructed to be fair and impartial. As to what type of witness she's coming off as, she's describing someone that she was. Someone she said.
It hit Diddy like a gut punch. He buried his face in his hands, fully aware of what was about to unfold. One by one, those celebrity messages lit up the courtroom screens. A top rapper reached out after a Grammy afterparty. "You okay? What I saw tonight wasn't right. You can stay at my place if you need to." A well-known female pop star wrote, "I've known him for 15 years. Never seen him act like that with anyone else. This isn't normal. Please call me." But the most damning was a message from a longtime producer who had worked closely with Diddy for decades. After witnessing something troubling in the studio, he sent Cassie a chilling note. "I can't be around this anymore. I told him to get help. Call me when you're safe." These texts shattered the carefully crafted public image. Diddy's effort to maintain that no one ever noticed, that it was all just drama or exaggeration, completely crumbled. These weren't casual observers. They were people who knew him well and were genuinely worried. And then it got worse because his own messages appeared next. Screenshots revealed Diddy texting Cassie things like, "I'm sorry about last night. You know how I get when I drink? It won't happen again." Another read, "Whatever you need to make this right. Just name it. New car, new apartment, whatever you want." Then came the messages that sounded like hush money offers. "My lawyer can drop the paperwork tomorrow. $2 million clean break. You don't talk about anything from the past 5 years."
So I think that's the takeaway. This is someone who is making it very clear that at that particular time in her life, she says she did not have any control really over what she wore, what she did, who she was having sex with. She's a different person now. But I think when she talks about those details and even reflecting on them for herself, as we saw today, she broke down.
As those damning messages were read aloud in the courtroom, the atmosphere turned utterly silent. So quiet you could almost hear a pin drop. Every eye was fixed on the screen, every ear straining to catch every word. The weight of those texts, the emails, the photos, the recordings, hung heavy in the air. It was like watching a slow-motion collapse of everything Diddy had spent decades building. The man who once commanded the music industry with an iron fist, the mogul who transformed hip-hop into a global empire, was now reduced to a stunned, pale figure trying to process the onslaught of evidence against him. The scene inside the courtroom was unforgettable. People who had arrived that morning with Diddy, his entourage, his closest supporters, the ones who sat directly behind him wearing confident smiles, nodding in encouragement, began to quietly slip away. One by one, they vanished, leaving their seats empty without a word, without a scene. It was as if the crushing weight of the evidence was too much to bear, and they couldn't stand to watch their leader's empire unravel any longer. The aura of invincibility Diddy had cultivated for years was shattering in real time, and his support system was dissolving right before everyone's eyes. By the time Cassie wrapped up that part of her testimony, Diddy sat nearly alone at his table. Gone were the visible signs of strength and solidarity he'd shown earlier in the day. Just him and his legal team remained, a stark contrast to the royal procession he'd entered with. The walls of backup that once protected him had crumbled. The courtroom had flipped completely upside down, transformed by the explosive evidence laid bare. The revealing texts, the haunting photos, the audio recordings that no one could ignore. This wasn't just a legal proceeding anymore. It was a public unmasking. Diddy walked into that courtroom like hip-hop royalty, the untouchable king of the industry, a man whose name meant power and control. But he left looking wrecked, stripped of the carefully polished image he'd spent years cultivating. Even the tight security detail around him couldn't shield him from the fallout. The mighty mogul was exposed, vulnerable, and visibly shaken. This wasn't merely Cassie telling her side of the story. It was a total rewriting of Diddy's legacy. The receipts she presented were meticulous and undeniable. The calm, measured way she delivered her testimony only made it more chilling. The messages from celebrities and close insiders, people who had partied with him, worked alongside him, and witnessed the dark side he'd kept hidden, painted a picture of a man far removed from the polished public persona. They showed a troubled individual whose power came with a dangerous edge, someone who wielded influence not just in music, but in controlling and silencing those around him. And the fallout was clear. The question isn't just whether Diddy will win this case, it's whether his reputation can survive the tsunami of revelations the world just witnessed. This trial has ripped open a narrative that many thought was untouchable, and now everyone is watching to see what comes next. If this shook you as much as it shook us, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe for more explosive updates as this story unfolds. Drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts. Do you think this marks the end of Diddy's empire? And of course, share this with someone who needs to hear the full story. We'll catch you on the next update.